Their total revenue is about $2 trillion a year. Global GDP is almost 100 trillion. So Silicon Valley thinks they're really fucking smart, but they're going after 2% of what's going on in the world. The 98%, energy, water, waste, food, sanitation, construction, the things every human on Earth relies on, Silicon Valley hasn't touched those yet. And so that's where deep tech goes. Late stage deep tech, that's called industrials. Like the things we're doing, they're just modern industrials, but we're going to make those industries a lot cleaner, a lot more profitable, a lot faster, a lot more humane, a lot better than they were. And that's why it's so exciting, because now we have the toolkit to do that.
Hello and welcome to Kaplankaya on the southwestern Aegean coast of Turkey. We are recording the podcast, the Harvest series, where we interview amazing speakers, practitioners and artists joining the Harvest Summit. I hope you will enjoy this episode. Welcome to Harvest series. We're in Kaplankaya and my guest today is Pablos Holman, a hacker and an inventor from the Silicon Valley. With a career dedicated to reshaping the world through technology, Pablos has been at the forefront of innovation for decades. Join us as we delve into Pablos' journey, exploring his groundbreaking inventions and visionary approach to shaping the future. Hello, Pablos.
Hi.
Welcome in Kaplankaya.
Yeah, it's a great place to be hanging out.
Yes, a very nice place, and thanks for joining Harvest. We'll go through all your careers and your inventions and what you do now for venture capital.
Sure.
But first, I would like to talk a little bit about the technology. Humans, I think, have this love and hate relationship with technology because it's what enabled us to maybe cut food in the beginning or to explore other parts of the world, to be in touch with your mother every day if you want to, but also it's what allowed to erase city from a map with a bomb, or it also creates struggles to fight addiction against a screen. So what's your relationship with technology?
For me, it's tools. These are tools. And they're tools for humans to exercise our values into the world. So if you have a hammer, whoever invented the hammer probably got busy smashing some heads. You and I have had access to hammers our whole lives and probably have never done that. And so the values vary. And I think for what a lot of people are experiencing with technology is they're going through these kind of developmental phases where it's early days for a lot of technologies. And we're kind of like the guy who invented the hammer. So when you think about the things that we're pissed off about, social media, we're probably like in junior high with that. We're still not very mature. Yeah. We have this thing, it's partly helpful, partly horrible. We haven't built up the kind of a clear understanding of what it's good for. We're overdoing it. We're getting addicted. Some people are in rehab. Some people should be in rehab. There's just a lot that we're not happy with because it's early days. And we don't have that problem really with with the hammer. And we don't have that problem with a lot of technologies that we developed because we're much more mature with them, and that we don't even think of them as technologies. Hammers and wheels, and even cars and planes and boats and trains, all those kinds of things. We invented them a long time ago, but we have a more developed relationship with them. And so I think it's important to understand that every new technology is a tool, and it can be wielded in either way. Like we can use it to cause more problems, to make things worse, to be egotistical, and to try to use it to gain more power for ourselves, or we can learn to use that to maybe serve a higher purpose, which might be make the world better for the people who are here and the people who are coming.
Yeah, to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Where do we want to go with these new technologies to let us expand in the way that we want to? And what are we going to lose in the way, like with the new technologies now from the Silicon Valley and the modern ones?
Yeah, well, we're losing something now for sure, because a big part of it is it takes time to develop a relationship with the new technology. And so, if you think about, we've all seen people in our lifetime, maybe overdo it a little bit on alcohol when they're in their teens and 20s, and then, some of them get that under control and some of them never do. And I feel like we're experiencing that with a lot of technologies at once right now. And we will get them under control. We will learn how much is too much. We will create societal structures to help people navigate that. We'll help our kids navigate those things because we'll know how to do it better, or our kids will figure it out and they'll help their kids navigate it better in a way that we weren't prepared to do. So those are examples maybe for things like social media. New technologies like AI we're panicking about right now, but that's because we're still in preschool with it. We really have no understanding, no maturity, no ability to put that in a context that makes us feel comfortable. And so that takes time. And it's one of the very frustrating parts of the human experience is that a lot of these things just take time, and we are very impatient. And so,
but you're confident in the process that humans always adapt to the technologies.
Yeah, and when you look back in human history, the new technologies, when we invent them and we develop them and figure out how to make them cost effective and try them out and figure out which ones are good, we almost always fuck it up for a couple of generations. Like whoever invented the wheel was probably assassinated. And then, for a couple hundred years, we probably killed off everybody with wheels. And then some kids came along and were like, fuck you, Dad, wheels are cool. And we've had wheels ever since. And so that's what I mean by developmental phases and that maturation cycle. And so the technology always wins in the long run. So if you have a technology that's good, that we developed, made cost effective and all those kinds of things, we always eventually adopt it. It's just really hard in the short run. We get the story wrong in our heads, and we often make the wrong decision in the short run. But eventually, we get it under control, and it can fulfill its potential in helping humans.
So you're into venture capital, working with Intellectual Ventures Lab, where you and the team aim to create new technologies a decade ahead of their time. What's the priority when you're choosing a project?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, what had happened for us in a lot of us who are technologists and trying to advance new technologies through the 90s and 2000s, so much was invented, and we really were wrong about the timeline. Things that we thought we would build and deploy in a couple of years ended up taking a decade or more. I worked on cryptocurrency in the 90s, and in those days, we didn't realize it, but we invented a bunch of cryptocurrencies and even deployed some, but they were doomed because there just weren't enough people on the internet. So we didn't understand those things at the time, and it eventually...
That's frustrating, no?
Well, it's very frustrating, yes. But then, I worked on AI in 2000. That was before anybody had heard of AI, and we were writing AI systems to help us trade stocks. And, and that was also too early. 0% of trading was automated in those days. Now it's like 99%. And so then I...
So you invented, or you were interested in lots of things before
very early
people were ready to adopt it or in the mood to...
it's not that hard to do. I like to do that because if you can learn and understand about scientific breakthroughs or technical advancements, then you can start to be putting the puzzle together and start thinking about, okay, well, how could we make this real? And I had that experience of being 10 years too early too many times. And so when we started the Intellectual Ventures Lab, what we were trying to do was really aim ourselves at just pure invention. Silicon Valley had kind of gotten drunk on software and was just doing that. So we figured we'd go work on the other kinds of technologies that were being ignored and go after some bigger problems that software can't solve. And so we worked on deep tech inventions, and we got 6,000 patents on our own inventions. But we did that by just doing the invention part. So we just focus on invention. And the job was to be 10 years early. The job was to figure out what's going to be technically possible, never mind how long it's going to take to do it, because we're always going to guess wrong about that. But we can invent these things, we can patent them, we can then go look for people to license or buy those inventions or spin them out of startups and try to make a lot more of these technologies come to life. And that was what we were working on. And we had some successes, and we have a lot of inventions that no one started working on yet.
Okay. When I listen to you, I realize how timing is essential for innovation and technologies.
Yeah, timing matters because we live in this like very complex world, and there are so many factors that affect your success. So, for example, like I was talking about with cryptocurrency, even if we made, even if we had made Bitcoin in the 90s, which we didn't, it wouldn't have taken off because there weren't enough people on the internet to put it to use. And so we got the timing wrong. I worked on trying to miniaturize computers in 2002, 2003. We were trying to take this aircraft carrier size laptop and then shrink it down to fit in your pocket. And we did that. And we made the world's coolest computer. It was called OQO. And it was the size of like your passport.
Okay.
A little thicker.
So like an iPhone.
Yeah, but it was before anybody had imagined iPhone.
Okay. Yeah.
And a lot of the technologies we invented.
What was the time?
This is 2000. We shipped it in 2003 or 2004. 2003. And so this is a lot of the technologies that made iPhone possible, but we were too early, too expensive, too cool, and it was not a commercial success at that time, but we laid the groundwork for iPhone. And so, those are things that you get some scar tissue from that, and you learn like, oh, I'm guessing wrong about the timing, but right about the tech. And so what was cool about intellectual ventures is we could kind of decouple those things a little bit. We just had to be right about the tech. We didn't have to be right about the timing. And then what I found there was that in most industries that didn't know what to do with an invention, all the people who do new stuff were jettisoned in the 80s. Yeah. So what most industries are doing is, even if they are inventing, they're doing a slightly faster, slightly cheaper version of what they did last year. Like, it's easy to imagine, like, Hewlett-Packard is figuring out how to make a cheaper inkjet, and they probably have the perfect people to do that. I wouldn't work on that. I wouldn't try. Okay. I'm going to try and invent.
And for you, it's not an invention. It's just a major improvement.
Yeah, it's an invention of a class, but I'm trying to figure out what comes after inkjet. Okay. Like, what's 10x better? What's 100x better? What's 1,000x better than inkjet? That would be interesting to me. And so we would work on those kinds of things. And that's what we typically call deep tech. And so today, what I do, I found that because these industries weren't adopting the things we were inventing, they weren't bringing them to commercial viability and running with them. In some industries, it works better than others, and we had some success with that. But what the machinery for doing new things is startup. And the world has highly developed startup. At least in the US, we're really good at it. And so we make lots and lots of startups, and you could think of every startup as like $1 million experiment, right? So we run thousands of those out of Silicon Valley. Most of them die or don't go anywhere, but it's a way to discover the hits. Each startup is trying to find its way through the world and trying to figure out how do you map this new technology or this new product or whatever you're making into the world. And so startup is just the right machinery to do new things, or at least the best we have so far. And so what I realized is that we just weren't set up to make startups, and we didn't make a lot of them. We made a couple dozen or something, but we could have made hundreds. And so now I run Deep Future, which is a venture fund, and what we do is we invest in breakthroughs, and we find those inventors, mad scientists, the people who have the new technologies, and have created them in a garage or a lab, and then we try to get that out and into a startup context that the world knows. The world knows the API of startup. They know how to buy and sell and trade and invest in startups and become a customer and work for them and all those kinds of things. So startup machinery is highly developed and efficient. It's just that we've been busy aiming it at SaaS holes instead of aiming it at new technologies that can solve bigger problems.
Well, what's the business model and the structure of Deep Future? And you're playing on synergies or collaborations?
Yeah, we're a totally normal venture fund. And so in the sense that everything's structured in a normal way. And this is one of the things that has advanced. Venture funds are all pretty cookie cutter now as far as how they're structured. And then what they do is a venture fund will typically focus on a certain industry or a certain class of problems. Like you might be focused on mobility, which is like electric cars and scooters and shit. Sorry. You might be focused on, I don't know, mobile phone tech or enterprise software, things like that. So usually they have a focus, and then they'll also focus on a stage of the life cycle of a startup, because startups are like, they're like kids. Somebody's got to like put them through college, get them into private school, maybe, figure out what preschool they're going to go to. I only do the really fun part at the beginning. But other people focus on different stages of the life of a startup. So you might have, what you call like a seed investor. They're usually the guy who comes after me. Okay. So I'm the pre-seed investor, usually the very first investor in some, new technology, because they can't even show it yet. There's no prototype. They've got like some code or some robot parts twitching around on a bench. They don't have a customer. They don't have business. They don't have a product. They don't have anything yet. So I invest at that stage where it's very technical. I'm investing in the technology. I have to believe in something that doesn't exist really yet. Most people don't want to do that. Most people want to invest in a spreadsheet. Yeah. And so they'll come after me once we've got the thing working. There's something to see, maybe a customer signed up, those kinds of things. Those are typically your seed investors. And then there's people who focus on later stages, Series A, Series B. That's when, we're scaling up the business and getting more customers and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot more people doing those things and a lot more money in that part of it. What I do is pretty radical because of how early it is and how technical it is.
And what are the investments you're proud of so far?
Oh, wow. We've been doing all kinds of amazing stuff. So one that I think is just an easy example is we have a company making cargo ships, but they're autonomous like a Tesla, and they're sailing in the wind. Okay. So they need no crew, no fuel, no emissions. Yeah. So the shipping industry is like twice the emissions of air travel. They literally burn half of their OPEX as fuel. It's like it's this insane thing where self-driving ships are way easier than self-driving cars. There's no pedestrians in the ocean. Yeah, there's nothing to hit. And sailing's been working for centuries. But for some reason, we built this whole industry burning nasty bunker oil. The fuel for a ship is like optimized for carbon emissions. It's horrible. So and at the end of the day, what are they really doing? Delivering Happy Meal toys from China to Los Angeles. It's just, there's nothing not to like about cargo ships that can sail themselves. And that's not even technically very hard. Wow, it's probably the least technical thing that we do.
It's potentially a huge impact, no?
It's huge. Yeah. It's a $2 trillion industry, which is bigger than most of all software combined. It's insanity. So we can fix that and make it better, and that's one thing we're working on. But you can see how that's one where, it sounds a little wild, and hardly anybody will invest in it at this stage. We do, because that's my job, is to look at that, say, okay, that'll work technically. The technology is working. They have the prototypes sailing and everything now. But the day that we built, so we have to use venture money to kind of build the first ship, let's say. But once that first ship sails, everyone will believe it, because they can see it with their own eyes. Yeah. They can understand, oh, that thing's sailing, duh. Why wouldn't we do that? And
they would be able to see, for example, if there's a boat on the way.
Yeah, that's easy to do.
Yeah, okay,
Boats
to avoid
fast.
dangers. Right.
Yeah, we have robots that can, outperform Chinese acrobats. They're really fast. It's not hard for a ship and these things have electric power to get through dead zones and steer out of the way if something's coming, or park themselves in a dock, but yeah. Wow. So it's exciting.
Yeah,
and that's coming, and you can see how, if you care at all about cleaning up the oceans or cleaning up the atmosphere or any of those things, there's nobody has any other idea how to make zero carbon shipping. The only other way to do it that we know of would be to put nuclear reactors on cargo ships, the way we do with aircraft carriers and nuclear subs. And nobody has even suggested that. No, I've never heard anybody once suggest that. This is the first time I've ever mentioned it, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone else suggest that we do that for cargo ships. And even though that wouldn't be such a bad idea.
It wouldn't be such a bad idea.
No, that'd be a great idea.
Okay, so
this is better.
Think about this now.
The self-sailing cargo ships is better, but nuclear reactors on cargo ships would also be really good.
Okay, yeah, because you're not scared of nuclear, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Nuclear reactors have the best safety track record of any kind of energy humans have ever used. They're safer than solar panels. They're safer than windmills. But I'm not exaggerating at all.
Yeah, really, can you
even counting Chernobyl, even counting the disasters in Fukushima, they're still safer than all those other things.
Wow, can you explain this? I'm French, so nuclear is a bit like a French thing, but still...
No, the French are amazing. They're leaders now. When I was a kid, German engineers were the smartest people on earth. And French engineers were just doing poetry and eating cheese, and I thought they were idiots. No. And now it looks like it's completely the other way around. The German engineers, in their infinite wisdom to save the environment, have shut down their nuclear reactors and to buy gas from Russia. I don't know how that adds up. And the French are building nuclear reactors and selling power to Germany. It's wonderful. France is amazing right now. I'm so impressed. I got to say. You. I don't know how it's doing with poetry, but it's doing great with nuclear.
Making the world a better place is important for you from venture capital. It's almost like we're not used to that from a venture capital, from the Silicon Valley trying to save the world. Yeah. Yeah,
Silicon Valley kind of lost its way. I mean, I think, I come from the Silicon Valley of the 80s where, the job was to take these new complicated technologies and bring them into the world because they can be helpful, because they can make things better, because they can be useful and for people. And, Silicon Valley attracted a lot of opportunists just because it was so successful. And, we need to do that too. Like all these iPhone apps, I'm sure somebody needs them, but there's just a hard limit on what kinds of problems you're going to solve with software. And so in the last 20 years, Silicon Valley has decided that hardware is too hard. They don't want to do anything that's not easy. All the easy shit's been done. So now it's exciting time because we really get to course correct. We get to aim the highly developed machinery of startups and venture capital, but we get to aim it at the bigger problems, the bigger opportunities. Look, if you add up all of the software companies, including Microsoft, Salesforce, Facebook, just all of them, their total revenue is about $2 trillion a year. Global GDP is almost $100 trillion. So Silicon Valley thinks they're really fucking smart, but they're going after 2% of what's going on in the world. The 98%, energy, water, waste, food, sanitation, construction, the things every human on earth relies on, Silicon Valley hasn't touched those yet. Mm-hmm. And so that's where deep tech goes. You know, late stage deep tech, that's called industrials. Like the things we're doing, they're just modern industrials, but we're going to make those industries a lot cleaner, a lot more profitable, a lot faster, a lot more humane, a lot better than they were. And that's why it's so exciting, because now we have the toolkit to do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it combines a good philosophy, I guess, in a way, and our own interest also as a human species, and finance.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's why
Yeah, I mean, I think the machinery of venture capital is working. We've just been aiming it in the wrong direction.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like I said about the hammer. You know,
Yeah.
a hammer is really useful if you're using it to build a home. But if all you're doing is smashing heads, then at some point, you know, you're not really helping. At least you're not helping humanity. So I think the machinery of venture capital is actually really wonderful. It's a way to get resources aimed at doing new things that are difficult and high risk, but the reward is there. So it's been an extraordinarily high performing asset class. It's a very important asset class because it's doing something nothing else can do. No one else can invest in these kinds of things. But we got a little lazy, and venture capital got a little bit, I think, just, you know, lack of ambition. You know, they wanted to get rich, but they didn't want to do anything really important. So,
if we compare, so you were mentioning the Silicon Valley, and there are new places in the world trying to compete or reproduce or be different. Which one are interesting for you? Like in the Middle East, Asia, Europe?
Yeah, I've been all over the world to a lot of places that are supposed to be the Silicon Valley of Europe or the Silicon Valley of South America or the Silicon Valley of Asia. And they're all bullshit.
No filter.
There's a, I guess you can censor me after in the post processing here. No, the only exception is Israel.
Okay.
So Israel is extraordinary,
innovative,
and innovative. They're smart, they're educated, they're all crazy, they're fun, they're doing a great job of doing new things. It makes Silicon Valley even seem old and slow and boring at times. I really have been impressed with what I've seen in Israel. And I'm not Jewish, I'm not Israeli, I just have been there a bunch because of the tech, and it's really impressive. Everywhere else, here's the problem. They're lying to themselves. Even if they get the money together, even if they get smart people together, they're not doing the most important thing, which is they bring with them this culture that is a culture that cannot embrace the risk and the failure.
Okay.
So if you have a startup in a lot of places in Europe, even like Italy, for example, if you have a startup in Italy and it fails, they open a criminal investigation. Mm-hmm. If I have a startup in San Francisco and it fails, my investors are calling me the next day, not to find out what happened to their money, to find out what I'm doing next.
Okay.
I'm not exaggerating at all. That has literally happened to me. And the reason is, in Silicon Valley, we have that ecosystem. We know that collectively we're going to find the hits. And part of finding the hits is finding all the failures as fast as we can. That's not been internalized anywhere else in the world, as far as I can tell. And so, people who start companies, they do tech startups in other places. They're doing like tech startup cosplay. They're not as aggressive. They're not shooting for the finish line. They're not taking the best technology and going as far as they can, as fast as they can. They're hedging their bets because failure would mean career suicide. Mm-hmm. It's not their fault. they're doing the right thing. They're trying really hard. They deserve a lot more support, but what they're not getting from the society around them is they're not getting celebrated even when they fail. And I do.
Okay.
And that's the unfair difference in Silicon Valley. And it's pissing me off because I need to see the rest of the world playing this game. We need everybody we can't just be in Silicon Valley anymore. We have to diffuse that around the rest of the world. What we need everybody else to do is steal shit from Silicon Valley, learn what we did that worked, copy that, learn what we did that didn't work, show us how to do it better. Like get competitive and try to kick our ass at the startup game, because that's how we're going to diffuse out what Silicon Valley has done that's working. And look, I don't mean to beat you over the head. I will beat you over the head. How many successful big tech companies can you name from Europe?
I'm very bad at this. Wow.
Yeah. If you were good at it, you'd come up with like 3 or 4.
Okay, no.
All right, including like Spotify, let's say.
Okay.
How many could you name from China?
Well, Alibaba.
Yeah, good.
I've got one. I've lived in Hong Kong for
Yeah.
years, so I can.
You could probably, you got the
There is a lot
TikTok guys and the
it's
WeChat
a lot
guys.
in Asia, no? It's a,
No,
No?
there's like 4 or 5
Okay.
big tech companies. How many could you name, even though you suck at this game?
Yeah,
how many could you name
so stop it,
from
please.
California?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah,
Without
yeah,
even
for
trying,
sure.
without
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at your
yeah,
phone.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
bragging. I'm not saying it's right, but we have to be honest with ourselves about this is the state of the world. Silicon Valley is doing something right that the rest of the world has not figured out
Right.
how to
True.
play in the major leagues. They're playing in the little league. And so I want to fix that. I want to see that change, but it will not change if we're not honest with ourselves that the way everybody else is trying to do startups doesn't work, and ours does in Silicon Valley. So copy us, steal from us, show us what we're doing wrong, show us how to do it better. I'm cool with all that. I would rather lose to people doing it better than us, but what I can't stand is people lying to themselves and doing fake startups. It's not helping anyone.
Okay. Do you think the legislation also is?
The legislation is a big part of it.
US? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we make it, historically we've made it easier to start new things, to try new things. Like the cost of creating a startup is incredibly low in the U.S. I don't even think about the cost. I'm like, I download some PDFs, sign them. I don't even know what the costs are. It's like hundreds of dollars, not thousands, to start a company in the U.S. And in most states, you could do it in less than a week. In some states, you can do it in less than an hour. And so that's how that facilitates making it easy and fast and low cost to try things is the trick. You want to be able to try a lot of things, because here's the problem. I've literally worked with the smartest people on earth. It's documented. I'm not making that up. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, like, if you go try to figure out who the smartest people on earth are, they're people I've worked with mostly. The point of that is I'm not bragging. It's because those are people who figured out that they're not smart enough to guess what's going to work in the future. The smartest people in Silicon Valley, we know we will not guess what's going to work in the future. We know that we have a machine to figure out what's going to work, and that is a machine that runs a lot of experiments. We get a lot of shots on goal. We try a lot of things, and then we throw out what doesn't work. And that's how you figure out what's going to work. And so you need whether you're in a business or in a startup or any context you're in, you have to optimize for getting a lot of shots on goal so that you can discover what works. I'll give you a great, clear example. The reason Silicon Valley is so successful is very explicitly this reason. We aren't that smart. We don't rely on being smart. We rely on running lots of experiments. So if you think about a software company, what are they doing? Well, they're making a product, but they don't make it the way we make cars and sunglasses and shoes. Those things are made on a 18-month product development cycle that goes from like whiteboard to like product testing to like, making molds to a factory in China and coming back on a boat. That all takes months and months and months. You got to guess a year or more in advance what's going to sell, right? You got to guess.
Yeah.
And nobody guesses right, ever. If you look at any of those industries, about cars, shoes, sunglasses, whatever, any product like that, somebody lost their job because they guessed wrong about what colors, what designs, what sizes, the volumes. In the apparel industry, they're doing this. 30% of the clothes made on this planet are never once worn by a human.
Yes,
Not even once.
Right.
Imagine if we drove a third of the cars we made straight from the factory to the landfill. Like, it's almost that bad. So we're just guessing wrong. Humans suck at guessing. And so what Silicon Valley is good at is getting rid of the guessing. We do something else. We do A/B testing.
Yeah.
A/B testing means we just ship some crap, try it out on you, see what you click on, see what you use, throw out what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And steer towards, so we're constantly steering towards what's working. And we have in software the most rapid iteration cycle. So we can do that in minutes now.
And you keep doing it.
We do it.
You don't rely on a good idea.
That's right. We don't rely on anybody being
Yeah.
smart. We rely on running a lot of tests. In large-scale software development operations like Facebook, everybody is running a different version of Facebook right now because they're all being A/B tested for a zillion little things. You don't remember upgrading from Facebook 9 to Facebook 10.
No.
Like, that never happens because it's continuous deployment. They literally are testing thousands of features every day and making little changes and updating, steering that product towards what works every day. And there's no release cycle. Anybody working at Facebook can just try out features. It's crazy. So anyway, the point of that is it makes Silicon Valley very powerful. And until you internalize that in a company or whatever you're doing, you will not outcompete Silicon Valley because they run tests. And so, like I said, startup ecosystem is thousands of $1 million experiments. Those are tests.
You were mentioning energy, water, waste management. Are you working or something about peace in the world? Because
Peace, no.
as we look at the world now, it's a bit depressing, and it's always been, we've always had wars, but maybe a good idea would be to focus on this.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to sort of classify problems into two piles. So in one pile, you got the problems that are technical that we might solve with technology, like I've been talking about, and that kind of stuff, very important. But the other pile is problems with people and between people and groups of people and with human decision making. Those are out of my jurisdiction. I work on the easy pile, which is how do we solve all those big problems around providing for people. But as far as how do you get them to behave better, to make better choices for their lives, their societies, their nations, that's more than one person can take on in a lifetime. And so I try to avoid it. But here's what I think. When you look at what's required for a human to feel fulfilled in their life, to be happy, to be healthy, to be taken care of, a lot of times this is described using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Everybody's seen this. It's like a little pyramid that shows at the bottom. It's like, breathing, food, staying warm. In the middle is like friends and family, and at the top is like, creativity and things like that. I've never seen a version of Maslow's hierarchy that showed energy at the bottom. But we are all made of energy. We are literally all made of stars. And it's not just song lyrics, like we literally are made of energy. And it's so fundamental that we don't even bother to show it on Maslow's hierarchy. And so what I think is interesting is when you go look at all those wars in history, what are they really about? Most of them are about access to resource, access to energy.
Right.
sometimes we frame it in a religious context, or we frame it in some, political, argument or whatever. But the truth is, we're fighting over energy. And when you look at what's happening with energy, an average person on this planet gets about as much energy as one toaster. So if you took your toaster and glue the button down, run it 24 hours a day, the amount of energy it consumes would be about equivalent to like all of the heating, cooling, food, travel, everything for one Earthling. I'm from the U.S., and we get 8 bonus toasters.
Okay.
So the average American gets 9 toasters worth of energy. 9 toasters running 24/7. I'm probably in the 20, 30, 40 toaster range, like a lot of people you know. But to get those averages, 3 billion people live on less than 1 toaster. So what's happened is we have not actually provided enough energy for most people on this planet. We made those people, but we didn't make the energy to take care of them. And so it's no wonder that we don't have peace on Earth.
Okay.
Right? We're fighting over access to energy. We're fighting over trying to figure out those people who don't, they all want 9 toasters. Right? They all probably deserve 9 toasters, but we didn't do the work to make 9 toasters available to everyone else. And if we don't solve that problem, we will not solve peace on Earth. We will not solve equality. We will not solve health. We will not solve any of the problems at the top of the pyramid that everybody else is, that we all care about so much.
Okay.
Like, we're trying so hard to solve these problems at the top of the pyramid, but we haven't solved the one at the bottom. And so it is a hopeless endeavor. We've put the cart before the horse on so many of the things we're trying to do. And I know everyone cares. I care as much as anyone else. I want recycling to work. It does not fucking work. You will not solve recycling
Really? Okay.
until you solve energy. Yeah. You will not solve you won't solve shipping till you solve energy. You won't solve water till you solve energy. We will not solve those problems. And we're lying to ourselves. We're being disingenuous about how important this is. So we have to solve energy first. And if we solve energy, you solve a lot of those other problems for free.
Okay.
What are people going to fight about when the whole planet gets 9 toasters?
And solving energy goes through private initiatives?
Well, humans have been trying to figure out how to solve energy for a long time. And a lot of the reason you and I exist is that we got partially good at it. And the way we did it was by digging stuff up and burning it, chopping stuff down and burning it. Basically burning everything in sight, and then when we ran out of those things, digging stuff up out of the ground and burning that too. So we're good at burning stuff. That is, the Industrial Revolution made it very efficient. We could aim that in energy wherever we wanted. And so, an internal combustion engine that's in your car, or in a dump truck or a tractor on a farm, those are ways of burning stuff and turning it into mechanical energy we can use to push things around and form the world and build stuff. And that's been very successful at making it possible to make a lot more people and a lot more lives, right? So we're at a point where, if you just look at, hold on, let's just start. Well, I can't read that. What's it say? You can cut this out. Oh, Silicon Valley.
Oh, no, that's for me.
Oh, that's for
you.
No, I thought you were
Sorry.
pointing at that for me.
No, that's a question I wanted to ask
Oh,
you.
okay.
Sorry,
Oh, yeah, hold on.
I'm not
Okay,
communicating.
so the burning stuff works, but I would think of it as kind of version 1. We had to do it to survive and to keep people from freezing to death and to be able to make enough food to feed everyone and those things, and that's great. But burning stuff, we've learned over time has some side effects. We've had, cities like, Los Angeles and Beijing where you can't even see your neighbors because the pollution is so bad. We have had lots of health problems exacerbated. Lots of people are dying even now. Most people are dying from something exacerbated by pollution from burning stuff. And, we built huge industries that have been very successful, and they're very proud of themselves, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the oil industry. I grew up in Alaska. If you're a preschool teacher in Alaska, you basically work for the oil industry. It's the only industry up there. Okay. And oil has been this miracle for making it possible to take care of the needs that people have. But we're smarter now. We're more educated now. We've measured and understood things more. And we figured out that, we're probably burning oil a little too aggressively. And we're living with the consequences a little too much. And so we need to figure out, how are we going to make version 2? And how is version 2 going to give us what oil did, but at a larger scale, and make it clean, and make it cheap, and make it everywhere? And so those are the goals. So we're at the beginning of figuring that out, I think. People have a lot of pipe dreams. They have a lot of romanticized ideas about how we're going to solve these problems. But most people haven't done any arithmetic to figure out if the solution that they're dreaming about is really going to solve the problem. And so we have this real problem with energy, where we've aimed a lot of our attention at things that aren't really going to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned you grew up in Alaska.
Yeah.
Very interested in your journey,
Oh.
your story. And how did you come from Alaska to Silicon Valley, and what did you do? I know you've been a hacker, so can you tell me your story?
Well, Alaska is like, it's one of the United States, but it is like a completely different country. And
you were born there?
I was born there 12 years after it became a state. Most Alaskans voted against making it a state. They didn't want to be part of the United States. They're very independent people.
Okay.
And they're all Americans who moved there from somewhere else to get away from something or somebody. So it's kind of like this, immigrant population melting pot of people from all over. But they share this, at least when I was a kid, they really shared this sensibility of being very independent and not wanting to be told what to do and those things. But the U.S. government, it was a territory of the U.S., and so the U.S. kept loading more and more military personnel onto 2 military bases in Alaska, and they get to vote. And so they sent all these military people to Alaska and loaded up for years before doing the vote about becoming a state, and all the military people voted. And so there weren't very many people in Alaska, so it wasn't hard to rock the vote. So it became a state. Anyway, the point is, I was born after that. But the most unique thing about it is that I ended up getting a computer, one of the first computers Apple ever made, an Apple II in the 1970s. And nobody for like 1,000 miles in any direction knew any more about a computer than me. Most people had never seen one. Most people had never heard of one. And so I had this computer. What
was your spirit? How did you become? Were you like a geek, or?
Well, I certainly became one. But that was, people didn't know what a computer geek was in those days, but they knew enough to know it wasn't cool. But they but it was definitely early days. So I had this computer, and I was so excited about it because I could see how it could be useful. And I was trying to always show people how useful it could be. And nobody believed me, because it's like, well, when it has more memory and when it's faster, it'll be useful. And nobody believed me at all. In fact, I had that computer and I had a skateboard. And most people were conflicted about which was the bigger waste of time. Like, it was literally that computer was that useless in their minds.
And your parents were scientists? Or?
No, my dad had worked in the oil industry and put some of the first computers in the oil industry. And so even he didn't know that much about them, but he just kind of had a sense that they were, that something was possible here. And so, and Apple, when they started, they needed customers, and the oil industry was the richest industry. So they went and tried to sell computers to the oil industry, and my dad's like, sure, I'll take one for my kid. And so we got one of the first Apple IIs, and I think one of the first like couple thousand ever made, And so I started, trying to figure out how to work it, but there's nobody to learn from. There's nobody who knows more. There's no computer science program. There's no YouTube. There's no Google. There's no internet. There's no nothing. It's just me and my computer in the basement. So I learned everything about it the hard way, just by like crashing it and rebooting it.
Wow.
I learned if you have computer nerds in the audience, they'll know. I learned to code by reverse engineering assembly language. That's the machine language for the computer. It's not made for human consumption. Nobody does that. That's a suicidal thing to do, but I did that. And so now I know what all those little ones and zeros are doing, but I learned over my career, I just had to learn the new stuff. So every day computers got a little more powerful, a little faster, a little more capable, more software, more things came, and I just had to learn the new stuff. So if you have a PhD in computer science, it's hard to catch up to me because I've been learning this stuff all along the way. Anyway, the point of all that is that's how I got started, but I was hooked on. I wasn't trying to work on the science of computation and things. I wanted to apply computers, and so I started taking them and putting them to work in businesses and all different industries and things. And I just felt like I was armed with this superpower. I could do things other people couldn't do that looked magical. And I would go help people to put computers to use. And so that was really the first technology superpower I got. And then up through the 80s and 90s, that's what I was doing. And in the 90s, trying to build the internet and stuff. And then in 2001, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do we take what we've learned about bringing computer technology to the world, but apply it in other types of technologies? And so that's when we started Blue Origin, which is a spaceship company. And the idea there is like, people misunderstand, they think this is like, billionaires with their big swinging rockets, just, playing around. But Blue Origin's vision is really about the future of humans. It's about the future of Earth. And, in the best case scenario, we really can't just be limited to this one planet. Earth will melt into the sun at some point. So Blue Origin's vision is literally trillions of humans thriving in space. And you turn Earth into like a wildlife refuge that you might come visit once in your lifetime. This is the most special, most beautiful planet. Like, we've built amazing telescopes. We've looked all over the universe. We cannot find a planet this good. This is a really great fucking planet. So you don't want to fuck it up. And at the same time, humans are probably the most extraordinary thing this world has ever produced. And so for them to continue to thrive and to continue to grow and to stop fighting each other, it'd be great if they could, expand beyond this planet. And so I know that's a crazy idea. It's thousands of years in the making. We're used to projects that I was complaining before about things that took more than 10 years. Well,
that's quite a vision, long-term vision now.
So from Blue Origin, I really learned to think on these longer time horizons. What's a 1,000-year project like? And what could a beautiful future for humanity really be like? And and one of the things I think appeals to me about it, I'm not really a science fiction fan or whatever, but when you map it back to the problems we were talking about, like one of those problems is how do you make greater societies that are more peaceful? How do you make societies that do a better job of taking care of people, and their not just their physical needs, which is again kind of what I'm aimed at, but like their psychological needs? How do you do that? And it turns out, like, if you take the thesis I described, which is that, well, none of us are smart enough to know, it means we have to run a lot of experiments. Like, we have to run a lot of experiments in society. Yeah. We have to figure out, how do we make better civilizations? The word civilization literally means to become more civil. And if you look around, is that what we're doing? So I think there's a kind of there's a pressure on humans now that comes from having run out of territory. Like, you used to be able to just get pissed off at your neighbors and go west. If you got pissed off and couldn't get along, and there's like this is too oppressive and your way sucks and I'm going to try a new thing, what you could do is just move to a new, continent.
Yeah.
And we're out of continents. We're out of places to go. And so it's hard to run new experiments on a societal scale. And I think that's really a really bad state for humans. And so I know this sounds kind of wild, but in the future you could imagine if we figure out how to make space colonies, then you could send people with weird religions or crazy ideas off in some direction, and they can try it out for a few thousand years, and maybe one of them will figure out something good. I'm for that. So
Plan B.
Anyway, that's well, there's no planet B, so we need a plan B.
I would almost, it's beautifully said, so I would almost like to stop like this, but I also wanted to, I'm very curious because I've never met and talked to a hacker.
Sure.
And you're qualified as a hacker, and I'm just curious about what is to be a hacker, and is it legal?
The first thing is you can't be qualified.
Okay.
Hacking is not something you could go to school for. That's like something you get kicked out of school for. So hacker is, what I love about hackers is they have these incredibly inventive minds, and they're good at figuring out what's possible, even if they, hackers don't read the directions. They're violating the warranty before they got the shrink wrap off. Hackers are really good at figuring out what you're not supposed to be able to do. And so every new technology has to start with that kind of discovery. It has to start with with a different kind of question. Like a good example is if you get a new gadget and give it to your mom, she might ask you, well, what does this do? And you can explain to your mom, it's a phone, iPhone, says on the box, right? But if you get a new gadget and give it to a hacker, then the question is different. The question is what can I make this do?
Okay.
Right? Hackers are going to take out all the screws, break it into a lot of little pieces, figure out what we can build from that. And that discovery process is just fundamental to invention. It's just fundamental to innovation, because without that, you're never going to get anything new. Nobody ever invented a new technology by reading the directions.
Okay.
Hackers
True.
are the people that are going to figure out what's possible. So I've been trying to get hackers and rescue them out of working on computer security. Computer security is just a bottomless pit of intriguing puzzles to a hacker. They don't care about computer security. They care about just the challenge of figuring out what's possible.
Okay.
So I try to get those people and aim them at, hey, there's more important problems over here in infectious disease or, clean water or energy or whatever. So let's try to do that. And so
convert that energy towards something different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But what about the ethics of hacking?
Well, okay. So I'm probably maybe not the first, but one of the first hackers to sort of show up in public and say that I'm a hacker. and that was decades ago. And at a time when the term was synonymous with criminal.
Yeah,
so,
to steal the money in the bank account
yeah,
or read
right,
the email of
exactly. And I'm the kind of guy who wants to be able to do that, but not necessarily do that.
Okay.
So because I was mostly blameless, I could get away with saying, hey, I'm a hacker. And what I started doing is going on we used to go to computer hacker conferences and try to impress other hackers and show how we could break things and steal passwords and shit. And hackers are they're the worst audience that you can get. They all think they're smarter than you, and they already know everything's broken anyway. So it's like preaching to the choir. So I started taking the fun things that hackers could do and going to other audiences, and just because I thought it was funny. And so I started stealing people's passwords and credit card numbers live on stage and hacking into their phones and computers and terrifying the shit out of them. Because I thought it was fun, and after doing but people thought it was entertaining, and so I got invited everywhere. And in those days, I was friends with the CEOs of a lot of the tech companies or the founders, so I could kind of get away with things you shouldn't be able to get away with, and so I could get bailed out if I got in trouble, basically. So I would do those things. These days, it would be impossible to do what I was doing without getting sued into oblivion. But it was fun. And because of that, people know me, even though there are lots of other hackers who are way more talented than me. They know me because I'm a lot of times like the first hacker people ever saw. And then like some of those things ended up on YouTube, and millions and millions of people have watched me hacking phones and computers on YouTube now. So I ended up being like the poster child for computer hacker for a long time. And actually,
it was a game
funny.
at the time. That was a game. It was a way to entertain.
Yeah, I thought. I was just doing it because I thought it was entertaining. And then over time, I realized, if I'm speaking at an event, I should probably have some point to make. And so I started showing the inventions more, and I started showing because we had this, this laboratory in Seattle where Nathan Myhrvold was inventing all kinds of crazy stuff, and people assumed it was totally evil. And for years we didn't talk about what we were doing, and so they just assumed we were up to no good. And so I started showing more and more of the inventions that came out of the lab and what we were actually working on. So it'd be like half hacking and half inventions. And then I just eventually stopped doing the hacking, and it's just inventions. These days I like to show the inventions. But we weren't up to no good. We were trying to figure out how do you eradicate malaria. I don't know. It's hard to paint that as a supervillain undertaking, but we invented a lot of technologies to help eradicate malaria and other infectious diseases in the developing world. We were trying to solve energy. We were trying to go after the truth is, for what we were doing, it didn't make sense to go after small problems. It only makes sense to try and solve big problems. And so we were working on the big problems.
So if some hackers want to do good and work at the Silicon Valley, they could contact you. They should contact you. You're interested in
anybody
their
with
profile.
like crazy hair and a DeLorean, you should just send them my way. Yeah.
Okay, I've got a last advice to ask you. Like, if you want to, for people, I would say, like, if you want to give an advice to people, how could they implement, our listeners, how could they implement a bit of the Silicon Valley spirit in their life, in their day-to-day life?
Yeah. I think the first one is to just get your sense of judgment under control. People are so proud of their ability to see something and immediately classify it as, total bullshit or never going to work or whatever. And if I'm in any part of the world besides Tel Aviv or Silicon Valley, and I show up with a crazy idea, I got loads of them. I remember one time I went to Italy to speak for this Italian pasta company, and I was really excited about it. They're like the biggest pasta company in the world. I got 1,200 of their Italian executives and employees there, and I got on stage and I told them about my idea for 3D printing food. And I said, probably two assholes in Silicon Valley are busy making a machine that goes next to your Nespresso that just makes fresh pasta in the morning, and you guys might want to get on that. And they basically ran me out of town, and I've never been back to Italy since, but because of my heretical ideas. I may have also offended them by explaining that God did not invent pasta. It doesn't grow out of the ground. It's actually an invention that humans made and learned to like, and like that either. So anyway, but if I'm in San Francisco and I grab a homeless guy on the street and start telling him about 3D printing food, he'll be like, "Cool, man. Yeah, you should talk to my cousin. He works for a venture capital fund. Might be able to help you." Like, everybody is in on it. Everybody will try to help you, get to the next level. They will give you the benefit of the doubt. Now, nerds will try and shoot holes in your plan. They'll say, well, that's not going to work because of this, but they will also try to patch up the holes and say, but maybe if you do it this way, or, so it's a society that helps elevate ideas and advance them and make them work and figure out what's going to work. And so most, what I find is, and I travel all over the world, I'm basically a posh refugee. I don't even have a home really. I just go everywhere. And everywhere I go, like people are not, they're happy to be entertained by these ideas, but they're not going to give them the time of day. They're not going to give them their creative attention. They're not going to start by asking, oh yeah, how could we make that work? They're going to start by saying, oh, here's why that'll never work. And so it's once you're hooked on that, it's really hard to be around people in other kinds of cultures.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel the sense of possibility that you do when you have that Silicon Valley gives you for free. Yeah. And so I think that most people are, their own identity is a little too wound up in this sense of judgment. It's not creative. It's just trying to show that they know the right answer, and it's really easy to just decide that the right answer is the one that says that won't work, because it's usually going to take us 10 or 15 years to prove that you're wrong anyway. So it's a safe bet. I don't think it's that creative. I don't think it's that valuable. I think it's lazy and irresponsible is the truth. When you look at what's happening with technology, a lot of it is just the stories that people have in their heads are wrong. When a new technology comes along, Hollywood makes a movie about how it's going to destroy everything. They did that with robots. They did it with nuclear reactors. They're doing it with AI now. And they're always wrong in the long run, but they make for these scary stories that people love to indulge in. And I don't think it's very creative. That we think they're so smart and creative, and they're making all these creative movies, and it's not that creative. If they're so creative, let's see them make a movie about how technology makes the future more awesome.
Instead of make it super scary.
Yeah. Can you think of one?
No.
They don't do that.
Right.
And so if all those writers want their jobs back, then, let's see them start writing stories that AI can't write about how the future is more awesome. The AI was trained on all the shit they wrote before, so it can't do it either. If you're so creative, write a story about how technology makes the future more awesome, and I will sign up for that.
I'd like to conclude with the harvest of the days. That's a question I'm asking to all the guests here. Yeah. Can you recall, because harvest this year is about radical connection, and yeah. I would like, if you can recall a memory when you were a child, yeah. And when you had a meal with your family or friends, what kind of food, what was the atmosphere? If you can describe this, who were with you?
Oh, wow.
Who was with you?
I'm probably one of the biggest heretics there is in food. I already told you I want to make food in 3D printers. Most people have a very romantic sensibility about food. They have that. It was a very social thing for them as a kid, the way you describe.
You didn't have that. You don't have this kind of memory.
It's not that I didn't have it. It's just that my stories are going to offend everybody else's sensibilities.
Go, please share then.
When I was 14, I got my dream job, which was working at McDonald's. It was the only.
And you're friending me. Yeah.
The only McDonald's in the town I lived in, small town in Alaska called Soldotna. No one's ever heard of it. I think there were 3,000 people in town at the time, and we were comparatively cosmopolitan because we had a McDonald's. Lots of small towns in Alaska that didn't ascend to such great metropolitan heights. So we had a McDonald's, and that was like the cool place to work for a 14-year-old.
That's where you felt radically connected, at McDonald's.
And what was cool about working at McDonald's is you could make things that you couldn't buy. So I could make like I could make like a triple decker cheeseburger, or I could mix things up. I could put these things. I could do mashups with food. I could make different things, and I loved being able to do that. And I dialed in my own McDonald's recipes of things I could make with McDonald's ingredients. Nobody else has that memory from childhood as their romantic memory of growing up and the connection from food. But what I loved about McDonald's. I mean, look, it's very easy to vilify McDonald's, but they were, this is in the early 80s, and they had optimized everything. Everything about McDonald's was streamlined, and efficient. That was not true for anything else in my life. I had never seen anything else that was streamlined or efficient, with the exception of the computer. And I liked that. And I liked that sensibility. And I could go into that environment. Once I got the job, I could go into the environment and I could try to start with something that was like mostly optimized and try to make it a little better. And I loved doing that. I was the fastest at everything. I figured out how to make fries faster, how to make burgers faster, how to do everything, like streamline it, boom, boom, boom. I was a burger making machine. I loved it.
Hacking McDonald's.
I was low quality. I was like the worst. I was like, the burgers weren't straight, but they didn't look like the ones in the picture, but I got more of them done faster, so I wasn't exactly a role model, and I got fired eventually for I think unreasonable circumstances, but yeah, that's, I don't know, to me, that's like my perverted sensibility about food.
Well, thanks for sharing. Pablos Holman, I really enjoyed talking innovation, Silicon Valley, energy, hacking, getting to the next level. That's what I would take from this, and McDonald's.
Yeah, we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pablos.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.